Chapter 7, Jack Ruby, Hired Killer. Ruby liked to play the role of Big Shot and often took pride in citing prominent persons as personal friends. FBI report on Jack Ruby, December 19th, 1963. The story of Jack Ruby's life is that he wanted to be a big shot and never made it. On November 24th, 1963, 2 days after President Kennedy's assassination, he shot his way into history with one well-aimed bullet from a .38 caliber revolver. But even then, playing before a nationwide TV audience, he failed in his ambition. The man he killed, Lee Harvey Oswald, was an easy target, manacled to a detective, and the world, it turned out, wanted that man to live so that he could answer for the murder of John F. Kennedy. When Ruby died of a blood clot in his cancerous lung 3 years later at Parkland Hospital, where Kennedy and Oswald had died before him, he was awaiting a second trial for the murder of Oswald. Convicted once, he had escaped the electric chair on grounds he didn't get a fair trial. He had made headlines and achieved notoriety. In the eyes of some authors, he had become part of a conspiracy, but he still hadn't achieved the class that he sought from boyhood to the grave. The picture of Ruby lunging forward and firing his pistol point blank into Oswald's stomach was etched into the memory of this generation, particularly those watching TV that gloomy Sunday morning. But to understand what propelled Ruby, a lonely failure, into the basement of the Dallas jail, and then prompted him to kill Oswald, another born loser, requires some understanding of Jacob Sparky Rubenstein. That was Ruby's name and nickname when he grew up in the pushcart ghetto on Chicago's west side. Born in 1911, the sixth of 9 children, his father was an alcoholic carpenter who had deserted the Tsarist army in Russia in 1898. Frequently arrested on drunkenness and assault charges, he was unemployed from 1928 until his death in 1958. His mother, born near Warsaw, was an illiterate. She signed her alien registration form with an X after 35 years in the U.S., who was twice committed to state mental hospitals before her death in 1944. Ruby's sister Ava gave him his nickname Sparky, but years later wasn't sure whether it came from his quick temper or from the bedraggled horse Sparkplug in the Barney Google comic strip of that era. Short and stocky, Ruby held his own in street fights, often with Italian gangs, but complained that his classmates picked on him. At 11, with an adequate IQ of 94, but truant and incorrigible at home, he was referred to Illinois Institute for Juvenile Research. He is egocentric and expects much attention, but is unable to get it as there are many children at home, his psychiatric interviewer reported. His behavior is further colored by his early sex experience, his great interest in sex, and the gang situation in the street. The interviewer also found his mother inadequate. As a result, young Ruby spent 4 or 5 years in foster homes. As a high school dropout, he scalped tickets for football games and fights, hustled peanuts, sold horse racing tip sheets, peddled carnations in nightclubs, and hung out at Dave Miller's gym. There, one of his idols, Barney Ross, worked out. Barney, who once ran errands for Al Capone, became a big shot, world's lightweight and welterweight champion. It was in the Capone era in Chicago. Some of Ruby's other West Side friends made it big in the gangs. In 1934, at the bottom of the Depression, Ruby went to the West Coast hoping to make it. He failed as a singing waiter in Los Angeles, then wound up selling newspaper subscriptions door to door in San Francisco. He brushed with class briefly. At a Jewish community center in San Francisco, he met Virginia Belasco, a well-to-do granddaughter of the playwright and actor David Belasco. She thought he dressed very well and was a personable date, but that was all. I'll tell you, he respects high people, his sister Ava told the Warren Commission. Back in Chicago in 1937, Ruby had a brief fling as an organizer for a racket-ridden junk handlers union, but quit after his sponsor, the financial secretary, was shot to death by the local's president. After that, he sold discount jewelry, punch boards, and busts of Franklin D. Roosevelt and worked as a bouncer in small-time night spots like the Club Aloha on West Madison Street. In Jack Arvey's 24th Ward, whose Jewish voters regularly rolled up Democratic pluralities of 80 to 85%, Ruby was apolitical. The only ideological act he ever committed, according to his friends, was to help break up pre-war German-American Bund meetings in Chicago. Dave Miller, the old fight referee, used to tip the gang at the Lawndale pool room and restaurant on where the Nazis were going to meet. Ruby was not a leader, but was responsible for cracking a few heads. He was so Jewish conscious, his brother Earl recalled, that he would fight if someone swore at a Jew half a block away. I know on several occasions he came home once with his suit full of blood from downtown. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Somebody called me a dirty Jew," or something like that. Drafted in 1943, Ruby served 3 years stateside in the Army Air Force, rising to the rank of private first class. Occasionally, he peddled punchboard chances, and in his barracks was rated a better card player than soldier. He was an emotional person, his staff sergeant recalled, who wept openly when FDR died. In Chicago, after the war, Ruby became a natty dresser, a moderately successful ladies' man, and a quarrelsome partner in a novelty manufacturing business, keychains, bottle openers, with brothers Earl and Sam. When the brothers paid him $14,000 to quit the business in 1947, he joined Sister Ava in a Dallas venture called the Singapore Supper Club. He also changed his name to Ruby. From that day until he shot Oswald, Ruby was an operator of unsuccessful nightclubs. The Singapore became the Silver Spur, a dance hall, and with borrowed money, he acquired the Ranch House, a Western-type saloon. Both eventually failed. In 1953, he got a piece of the Vegas Club, then took it over when his partner went to prison for sodomy. In 1959, Ruby saw another chance to attain class. With enough borrowed money to pay 3 months' rent, he opened the Sovereign Club, a plush establishment that would appeal to the carriage trade. It was so plush that Ruby required the waiters to sign receipts for the silverware they used for table setups. According to one employee, Ruby also conducted personal tryouts for all girls who came to work at the club. Even so, it failed. When Ruby fell behind on the rent, his financial backer, Ralph Paul, another Dallas club operator, insisted that he convert the Sovereign from a swank bistro into a strip-tease operation. Thus, the Sovereign became the Carousel, one of downtown Dallas's 3 burlesque clubs, a voyeur's delight serving pizza, champagne, beer, setups for hard liquor, and bosomy exotic dancers. Ruby moved back down into the world of tippling conventioneers and $110 a week performers with names like Tammy True, Kathy Kay, Cindy Embers, and Little Lynn. Ruby called them "my little girls." In pictures he had taken with them, at least at the moment the flashbulbs popped, he was a big shot, surrounded by scantily clad showgirls. But running the club was something else. The quick-tempered Ruby had trouble with the customers, the help, the unions, the police, everybody. He blackjacked a bartender, kicked a guitarist in the groin, slugged a band leader with brass knuckles, 8 stitches, threatened to throw a cigarette girl down the stairs, and fired his pistol into the ceiling to frighten unruly drunks. Despite his bravado, some of his employees thought Ruby, a bachelor, was homosexual or at best bisexual. A $300 a week stripper from New Orleans, Jada, said Ruby invited her to move into his apartment as a sort of status symbol on a platonic basis. A bartender told of an after-hours party at which Ruby peeled to his shorts while a stripper gyrated in front of him. When she backed away, Ruby, in a loud and excited voice, said, "Come on, man or woman, I'll take anyone on." He rarely dated his little girls. To stay on the good side of the police, Ruby stood them for free drinks, passed out fifths of whiskey at Christmas, and entertained as many as 8 at a time on the cuff at Sunday celebrity night parties. Some cops worked for him part-time, and one married a carousel stripper. Ruby also staged a benefit performance, presumably a strip for the widow of a dead policeman. He admired the police department. His sister Ava testified he was very close. The Dallas cops knew him as a police buff. The Warren Commission found no credible evidence that Ruby sought special favors, but concluded gingerly that his relationship to members of the Dallas Police Department is not susceptible of conclusive evaluation. If Ruby sought favors in return for his favors, he got mixed results. He was arrested 20 times for traffic violations, paid 7 fines, and twice was placed on probation as an habitual motor vehicle violator. He was arrested 8 times on such charges as disturbing the peace, carrying a concealed weapon twice, simple assault, selling liquor after hours, permitting dancing after hours, and ignoring his traffic tickets. Here he fared better than the average citizen, paying only a $10 fine for disturbing the peace, forfeiting bonds of $25 and $35 on the dancing and scofflaw charges, and getting complaints dropped or winning dismissals on the rest. He had a tougher time with the State Liquor Control Board, getting his license suspended twice for obscene shows, once for an employee's mortal turpitude, and once for writing bad checks to liquor wholesalers. The bad checks told as much about Ruby as the obscene shows. An incurable gambler, he was usually just one jump ahead of his creditors and often held out on his employees, whom he had paid in cash. The Carousel, in other words, was a seedy, shabby peep show saloon, not a lucrative, entrenched, protected syndicate operation. Because he operated on a cash basis, Ruby was carrying $2,000 in cash and had another $1,000 in the trunk of his car when he shot Oswald. But his club showed a profit of just $5,619 in 1962. He owed $44,000 to the U.S. in delinquent taxes and several $1,000s more to friends and relatives. Against this, he had $35.78 in his personal bank account and a total of $459.62 in Vegas and Carousel Club accounts. When he was wrestled to the floor by police, Ruby was wearing a diamond watch, a 3-diamond ring, a gold tie clasp, a silver tie clasp, and carrying a rent receipt for $62.50 a month apartment. This is the man that Lane, Weisberg, Buchanan, and other doubters of the Warren Commission report pretend to believe played a key role in a conspiracy by killing Oswald. With most of the critics, who are spared the necessity of offering more than innuendos by way of proof, the implication is that Ruby was part of a conspiracy that killed Kennedy too. The charge is made in oblique fashion. Whether Oswald was murdered because he was part of a conspiracy and the conspirators wanted to silence him, or because his ultimate vindication would have caused a search for the real criminals to take place, says Lane. From the point of view of the assassins, the decision to murder Oswald, though the risks involved were immense, might well have been soundly calculated. By the time the reader untangles the subjunctives of that sinister pronouncement, he is confronted with these alternatives by Lane. 1. Oswald was trigger man in the conspiracy to kill Kennedy, after which Ruby, one of several other conspirators, killed Oswald to silence him. Or 2. Oswald was innocent of Kennedy's murder, but the assassins, plural, including Ruby, decided to kill him so that the real criminals would not be sought. The mind boggles at either alternative. First, the thought of Oswald and Ruby, two unlikely plotters who didn't know each other, participating in a scheme whereby Oswald wound up dead and Ruby was sentenced to the electric chair, all without either Oswald or the garrulous Ruby talking, must tax the imagination, even of far-out whodunit fans. Second, the idea of Oswald, who owned the rifle that killed Kennedy, being entirely innocent but still getting rubbed out by the assassins who did kill Kennedy, with Ruby as their killer, is beyond human ken. But Lane is not deterred by such problems so long as he has a credulous audience and a few discredited witnesses, or a witness whose identity only he knows. Having found evidence of a conspiracy under every bed or hospital stretcher, Lane and Weisberg seem impelled to find that Ruby, the bumbling, weeping, quick-tempered, talkative saloon keeper, was also part of a cabal so ingenious that it left no trace but the bodies of its victims. Ruby shot Oswald at 11:21 a.m. as the accused assassin was led into the city jail basement to be transferred by police car to the Dallas County Jail a mile away, where he would have awaited trial for murder. "Jack, you son of a bitch," a horrified policeman shouted. Oswald's stomach wound, like the president's head wound, was insurvivable. He died at Parkland at 1:07 p.m., 2 days and 7 minutes after the president was pronounced dead. Ruby, not knowing whether he was a martyr or some screwball, gave at least two non-conflicting explanations of his act. He told the commission he did it to spare Jackie, because we owed it to our beloved president that she shouldn't have to come back to face trial of this heinous crime. He told an FBI agent he did it to show the world that a Jew had guts. In the end, Sister Ava said he died from mental anguish from people thinking he was part of a conspiracy. The commission, after a thorough investigation of the crime itself, also investigated Ruby and found him an improbable conspirator. Its investigation included not only tracing hundreds of Ruby's long-distance calls, but calls made by people Ruby called. Aside from the results of the commission's investigation reported above, the report said, there are other reasons to doubt that Jack Ruby would have shot Oswald as he did if he had been involved in a conspiracy to carry out the assassination, or that he would have been delegated to perform the shooting of Oswald on behalf of others who were involved in the slaying of the president. By striking in the city jail, Ruby was certain to have been apprehended. An attempt to silence Oswald by having Ruby kill him would have presented exceptionally grave dangers to any other persons involved in the scheme. If the attempt had failed, Oswald might have been moved to disclose his confederates to the authorities. If it succeeded as it did, the additional killing might itself have produced a trail to them. Moreover, Ruby was regarded by most persons who knew him as moody and unstable, hardly one to have encouraged the confidence of persons involved in a conspiracy.